with all the information the professional horse player needs. CapitalOTB.com.
Cassat.
We're back on Loose on the Lead on this sultry Sunday morning at Saratoga, the morning after the Alabama, the second appearance of Songbird this summer at the Spa. A real treat for horse players and for fans that have come out really in both settings. There would be no Songbird. I mean, she might be in another barn under another name if it wasn't for Tom McGreevy, bloodstock agent and pretty exclusive, it's fair to say. Exclusive.
Oh, yeah, I buy exclusively for Rick.
Yeah, for Rick Porter, 10 years?
About 10 years, yeah. I've also bought for him, and not on a regular basis, but I also bought horses for him. Like the first horse I bought for him was a filly called Zonk.
Oh, yeah.
And I met Rick through John Service. John Service and I were very good friends. And matter of fact, I trained at Penn National for a number of years, and when I was training up there, John Service was actually Jock's agent.
That's right.
And we got to know each other then, and we've been friends ever since. And John's just a great guy. And so how I met Rick was through John Service. And so I had met Rick one time, and I was at the Keeneland sale, and it was later in the sale, and I'd already purchased some horses for some clients I already had. And I saw this filly. He was very late in the sale. I called John. I said, John, you need to get your guy to buy this horse. And so he called him, and Rick called me, and we chatted a little bit, and we were on the phone with him, and he bought her. And it turned out to be Zonk. We bought her for $70,000. She was an Old Grade Stakes winner. So that kind of set the stage, and from there on.
How did you transition out of being a trainer into the bloodstock game?
Well, I had a lot of background in horses. I grew up with horses, and I always thought that was very fascinating to try to figure out that puzzle, what makes a good horse and where you find them. And what really helped me along the way, I graduated from Penn State in animal science. And while I was at Penn State, I was on the livestock judging team. And a lot of people don't realize they exist, but they do. Sure. And it was very competitive just to get on the team. And then we judged a lot of different, like in the Big Ten, there's a lot of contests, and we judged the Quarter Horse International Kansas City, a lot of different shows. But what you had to do there was, in the morning you had 12 different classes of animals. We judged anything from pigs to cattle to sheep. And you had 4 individuals in each class, and you placed them 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the afternoon, you had to go give an official judge why you liked them the way you just couldn't go in and say, this is a pretty horse. So you had most of the time go in there and say, I like this horse because of these attributes, and I followed him for these attributes. So it helped you develop your eye. You had to really study him and pick out, because I hear so many people, I really like this horse, but, you have to have a reason.
You made the animal judging team. You fell short with Joe Paterno and the Nittany Lions as a kicker.
Yeah, there was a little story there.
A barefoot kicker.
Yeah. I was in the Army before I went to Penn State. I was in Vietnam for a year. And I kicked there. And so I went to junior college for 2 years. And I always wanted to kick for Penn State. And at that time, I got back from Vietnam in 1968. Wow. And I went to York College for 2 years. Okay. But I practiced. My objective was to go to Penn State and be a kicker, because at that time Penn State didn't have many kickers. So the first day I transferred there my junior year, and the first day on campus I went and knocked on Paterno's door and said, I want to be a kicker. And he looked at me and he said, we already have a few kickers. I don't think, I said, Coach, I've been practicing for 2 years. Give me a shot. So he said, okay, come on down. So I went down to the practice field the next day and would introduce the kicking coach. And I kicked for him, and another coach came over to kick for him. Pretty soon the whole coaching staff was there watching me kick. And I was really kicking really well this day. So they finally called Paterno over, and everybody's watching me kick, and I'm kicking. And I think I was kicking for like 35 yards. And he came over and he said, okay, Tom, we're going to back you up 10 yards. And if you don't make this one, you're not going to make the team. And it's the best one I hit all day, right down the middle. He said, hey, you're as good as anybody we got. Come on back. Well, unfortunately for me, Chris Barr was the same year. I don't remember.
That's great.
Yeah.
Chris Barr showed up.
Yeah, Chris Barr. And
that's funny.
He was also on a scholarship there for soccer. He already had a soccer scholarship. Wow. So, and he beat me out. But it was one of those things. If I didn't try, I would have been really disappointed myself.
At least you tried.
Yeah. So it was a great experience, and it's one of those things that, I should have done this, or I should have at least tried this.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience. Yeah.
Too funny. Well, take us from the animal judging, and I'll mention to everybody, if you're in town for this now, for Travers Week, we transition as of tomorrow, Monday, up in Washington County in Greenwich. We got the Washington County Fair, one of the longest continually run agricultural shows in the country, and lots of
Maybe they have livestock judging.
Absolutely, you bet they got livestock judging. So come out to starting tomorrow, the wonderful fair at Greenwich. And in terms of your approach, because it's different, you don't care about pedigree per se. You don't look for siblings and this and going back on the pages. You like the physical properties of a horse.
Right. To me, the pedigree is just going to tell you pretty much what they're going to cost, from my opinion. And what I do, I go and I make my short list, and I always do it by myself. I just have my approach, and I just do it. And when Rick and I go look at our short list, it's usually pretty short. For instance, I'll give you an idea. Like at Keeneland, I'd say the first book, which is the first 4 days, I may have 10 or 12 on there, something like that. And then we'll go look at them together. Rick's very astute too about looking at individuals and what we like. And he has all the input, most of the input on the pedigrees and the price, So after we chat that about. But there are certain situations where if they don't meet his criteria for pedigree, I say, Rick, you need to put your hand up on this one.
Is that how you come up with the short list, though? Pedigree kind of starts things, and then you go to physicality?
No.
How do you put the short list together?
It's all physical.
So you come to a sale, and there's 200 horses. Do you look at all of them?
3,000 at Keeneland.
Well, yeah, Keeneland.
Well, what I do at Keeneland is, the first book, I get there early enough where I can pull everything out and look at the individuals. But after that, I have a little different approach, and most people were kind of shaking their head when I did, but I just do what I call stall search. I know what I'm looking for and the profile I need, and I'll just go and look in the stall. As a matter of fact, I'll go to say TaylorMade, and TaylorMade will send a guy with me, and they'll just give me a profile on the back wall. Don't bring them out, don't hook them up. Just and in 5 seconds, I say I have my card. Yes, no, yes, no. That way, I don't have anybody shortlisting for me. Not that there aren't a lot of qualified people out there, but I just want to make my own mistakes. I don't want to make somebody else's mistakes too.
You're looking for behavior and body language?
At that point, I'm looking for the individual.
I mean, but even in the stall, you don't need to see them walk. You don't.
Oh no, I'm just let me finish. So, I'd make my say if TaylorMade maybe have a whole barn, they have 40 horses in there. Once I go down to the stall search, I may have 5 horses that I'll bring out and evaluate those. Those are the ones I want to see. I'm just eliminating horses I don't want to see that way.
In terms of a couple of and I don't want to steal the secret sauce,
but first of all, there is no secret.
Okay,
there is no secret.
They all just
Yeah.
something pops. I mean, how much of it is is the confirmation definitions and
I think,
angles?
I think most everybody that has, there's a lot of really astute bloodstock agents out there know what they're looking for. Everybody looks pretty much the same thing, but it's just there's such a fine line between the good horses and the really good horses. And I think it even gets finer between the really good horses and the great horses. So to try to decipher that line and what pushes them over one way or the other is a real puzzle.
Let's talk about the line with Songbird. Let's watch the stretch run from the Alabama.
Yeah, I'd like
yesterday.
to see that again.
We haven't watched that yet. And question mark was 1.25 miles. She passed that test with flying colors. Talk about picking her out earlier, in the sale.
The good ones like her are easy. And when you have to go and try to scratch your head, is this the right one? You're on the wrong horse. Horses like her, when you see them, they're easy. I just marked, okay, we're going to go, we'll try to buy this one.
And she was up here, right?
She was at Saratoga, yeah. And to Rick's credit and our credit, I think that she was $400,000, but in that playground up there, that was about the average price for a Medallion d'Or filly with that kind of pedigree. I mean, it wasn't anything exaggerated, but and there is intangibles that you look at. I pay a lot of attention to their demeanor and how they handle themselves. And people don't understand that that's a lot of pressure for these young horses sometimes, especially at Keeneland. There's so much activity, and so the good horses figure that out very quickly. That situation. Every good horse I bought, and they bring them out and they show well. They're not, I see these horses that some horses that all they can see is this little box they're in, and you get horses like Songbird. They have all this figured out. All this stuff around. They're looking down to the next barn to see what's going on. But the other horses, that's all they can see, that little box they're in. So they talk about local eagles. To me, that's the local eagles that they figure they figure all this situation out here. They're looking for something else to attract.
To keep their minds occupied. And out of curiosity, when you talk about especially book one or select sales, Do you go back a couple different times during the day? Because if you see them in the morning before they've been shown 75 times, I mean, they talked about the sail topper here at Saratoga and was shown 280 times.
Right.
And there's a point in the afternoon where they start to get just surly if they don't have the demeanor.
Well, I think it's a little different here at Saratoga. There's just so few horses, and there's so many days to look at. At Keeneland's a different ballgame.
Yeah.
You know,
Bang, bang, bang.
And what I do, I make my short list, say on Monday, and the first thing the next day on Tuesday, the first thing I do is go look at my short list again, because I get a fresh eye, a fresh horse, and you might see something different. And I give them they were maybe just a little bit on the edge or something. Give them a chance to set a win one day. But I think it's so important to go for me. To go that next day and look at my short list and see if there's anything, because I get tired too at the end of the day after you look at all those horses, and maybe I missed something or so. And so I do get a lot clearer picture sometimes the next day. But again, like I say, if you got to study them too much and try to scratch your head, is this the right horse? Am I on the right? You need to move
pass.
Yeah.
And not to use the trite tick all the boxes, but it does have to hit you at a certain level.
Yeah, and there's so many. I think there's so many intangibles that put that horse over that fine line, and to me, it's their demeanor, how they handle. I mean, if you go back there and watch Songbird, she is just so professional in everything she does. She handles the pressure, and you have to. I mean, you see her in the paddock. I mean, if they walk in there like, I'm good. This is what I got. What you got?
Yeah. The budgetary portion of this, when it comes, and Porter's fascinating because it's always a range of about 250 to 400. That seems, whenever I see it, and usually there's an unbridled song or two in there.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success with unbridled songs. But we don't, if people think we're going to look for them, and then now they say, well, you're just buying tappets. Well, they just happen to fit in that pattern we're looking for.
You were on Tappet early, though.
Yeah, we bought Cassad, who, we bought, I can't think of off the top of my head, but yeah, we bought a number of tappets pretty early.
You talk about Saratoga, you talk about Keeneland. What other sales do you go to during the year?
Well, those are the two main ones. And then we go to Timonian, the sales there. And we bought horses at the 2-year-old sales too. We bought Norman Invasion at the 2-year-old sale. We bought Joyful Victory at the 2-year-old sale. So we concentrate mostly, I would much rather buy at the yearling sales because I think that I'm willing, like a lot of people, willing to go out there and beat the bushes a little harder. But you have to look at the 2-year-old sales because there's so many good horses that come through there that you'll be shooting yourself in the foot if you don't go look. And like I said, we bought Norman Invasion for like $220, I think. We bought Joyful Victor, I think, for, I don't know, what it was $350 or $400, something like that.
And we should mention, it goes beyond Songbird. As you sat down, we were kind of going through the list, and we'll pull up another Saratoga performance of a horse that is due to you. Havre de Grace here in the Woodward from a few years back. Nice performance, beating the boys in there. Talk a little bit about her, and we'll mention some of the other nice horses you picked up for Mr. Porter.
Havre de Grace is one of those must-have type horses. I mean, when Rick got to, I start looking on Friday, the first day they show, and Rick usually gets there on Sunday. And this was the first horse I showed him, and it was one of those must-haves. I mean, and we don't, Rick is more on pedigree, and this was St. Liam, was the first-year sire, and he's a little bit leery as far as paying much for a first-year sire, but she was just so gorgeous, and she just stood out, and I think we paid, what was it, $360 or something like that for her.
And then sold at the
$10 million.
$10 million made up for any mistakes elsewhere.
That will cover some sins.
And it's funny that we bring up Havre de Grace, and I think about Round Pond as well, who was a personal favorite. Hardspun was before you?
I did not buy Hardspun. There was one year in there when I wasn't working for Rick full time, and this one year my brothers wanted to buy some horses, and Rick and I talked, and I said, I can help you out some, because I wasn't working for him exclusively at that time. And he said, that's fine, he understood, and so I did not buy. But at that same sale, I did buy Midnight Loot from my brothers.
And you've actually got, we were talking yesterday, you have a wonderful Midnight Loot story because you were convinced Real Quiet was, was being a bit of a washout as a stallion at the time, had been shipped to Pennsylvania. Right. Talk about the Midnight Loot story.
Well, here's a typical, individual versus pedigree type situation. He was hip, I can still remember, he was hip 3,600 something at Keeneland, so he was in book 5 or 6, whatever it is. But I thought he was a standout, and like you say, he was by Real Quiet, who had shipped to Pennsylvania, was dead in the water. Nobody wanted Real Quiet, and the mayor at the time hasn't done anything. And so I told my brothers, I called him. I saw him the day before. I called him, said, we're buying this horse, and I think we bought him for, I think it was 70,000, and so. We took him to Pinhook, and we took and gave him to Eddie Woods, and Eddie did a great job with him. And I mean, all along he was just so impressive. So we got the 2-year-old sale, maybe on bullheader or whatever. But I think sometimes when you believe in what you see, you have to state it. Like I tell Rick, if I don't give you my opinion, it's not worth anything. I mean, I'm going to be wrong sometimes, but you have to voice your opinion. And I love this horse, and I told Eddie when we got the sale, he worked in 22 flat, which was so. But he could put a lot of 22s together. What he could do.
Exactly.
And so I told Eddie, I said, I made up my mind. I told my brother, we're not selling for less than 300. Everybody thought I was crazy that with his pedigree and stuff and the way it worked, but actually he attracted a lot of attention that day at the sale. I believe he was vetted 9 or 10 times by the right people, and he passed. But nobody was willing to step up and pay that for him. I bought him back. My brothers bought him back. My brothers were Mark and Dan, and they bought him back they weren't there, but I bought him back in the park. I think it was $280, and we took him back to Eddie Woods' place. And Bob Baffert called 3 or 4 days later and said he saw the video. He wasn't at the sale, but he saw the video and he wanted to buy the horse. And I said, well, that's the price. And to Bob's credit, he said he loved the video.
Unbelievable.
He loved the video, and he bought him. And of course, if I'd known he was going to be, a champion sprinter and won 2 Breeders' Cups, I may not sell him for 300, but at the time it was a lot of money for a Real Quiet. And
amazing.
So there's a typical thing about the pedigree, that it doesn't always dictate what the horse can do.
And as a corollary to that, I had this discussion with John Secura 2 weeks ago ahead of the Saratoga sale, because Midnight Loot is grinding out horses as a stallion, and as Baffert has said, and Secura tries to remind people, Baffert has always said if it wasn't for the breathing issue, he would have been a 1 1/8 or a classic distance horse. And given his size and proportion, he's getting big, beautiful horses of all kinds. Yeah. And he's standing at Hillendale and is a real consistent success commercially and for those that are breeding to race. To me, it's a great story. It's also a great testimony to the way you approach things. And Baffert, same kind of storyline. Yeah, and went to his big client, to Mike Pegram, and said, "We got a winner here."
Yeah. And he had a lot. He had the throat surgeries. And a lot of the times, those throat surgeries can be successful, but a lot of horses can't handle it mentally. Yep. Once they realize they can't get air one time, that they have
scared.
But he had such a great demeanor about him, and he was like the race at Monmouth we talked about the other day. That race at Monmouth when he won the Breeders' Cup was
unbelievable.
Was one of those that just give you chills. It just
on a track and a sea of slop, and just was
and I think there's another point there to be made that. He was never bred to be a sprinter. He never looked like a sprinter. But those great horses, and he was a great horse, they can do anything. You can put Songbird out there in a 5 furlong stake, and she's going to win it. Or you can put her in a 1 1/4 race, she's going to win it. Because those really great horses can do anything.
Catch a glimpse today. She's another example. Everybody was like, "Oh, how's she going to stretch out to a 1 1/4 in the Belmont Oaks?" With ease,
because she's good.
Yeah, and people forget the fractions. The fractions are only going to be slower early when you stretch out like that, and it makes it even easier for a horse like that. Yeah. And same thing with. Although yesterday, Songbird, I thought Jerry Hollendorfer's quote yesterday was really there was a lot more to that quote when he said she makes it look so easy, but it's not. And if you go back to the Oaks. She was wobbly with a little bit of heat at the end of that race, and you can see it looks like she's not putting in an effort, but she exudes her effort. I mean, she leaves it on the racetrack.
Well, I think another thing that's amazing about her, she never changes her way of going. You see the other horses get tired, they kind of lose their action. She never loses her action. She's just the same all the time. And I think what makes her so great is how she moves so efficiently. I mean, she's just so efficient in her moving. And
legs under her.
They just the same rhythm, and they breathe in the same rhythm as they move, and that's what those horses can go that distance. They just have that rhythmic movement and they breathe in the same way. You got these horses that have a lot of wasted action and stuff. They may be sprinters, but I don't think they're going to go 2 turns because they just have too much wasted action.
I also have to ask, because I ask all the connections, the owners, trainers, jockeys, bloodstock agents, but how much fun is it to win a race like that up at Saratoga, be sitting in the stands? And then the fans up here are so savvy, and Mike takes the horse down to the top of the stretch and comes back, applause all the way. That's got to be special.
I know Jerry and I were standing there together, and I said, Jerry, just listen to this. It's you bring a tear to your eye.
Yeah. It's special up there. All right, time to wrap things up,
Okay.
yes?
You got. I hope you were taking notes because you got one of the best in the business.
And let me tell you, there's no secret. So
the secret
Well, it
is,
sounds like the secret is just a lot of hard work.
yeah, it is. It's
Well-
an experience. One thing I want to add on this is that, the judging team. But one thing I did, I moved to Florida 30 years ago. I gave up my training out there in Penn National, moved down there. And one of the things I did every day, I'd go look at every good horse I could find. I was at Gulfstream. I was close to Gulfstream.
Interesting.
So I just go watch them in the paddock every time I could see a good horse. So my opinion, if you don't know what the end product looks like, it's pretty hard to find.
That is pretty interesting, because I always say to people, don't throw away your past performances at the end of the day, because then you know who won the races, so you can go back and kind of reverse engineer. And that's the same thing. If you're getting into the game, look at the champions, and then you know what a champion should look like.
Exactly. If you don't know what to look at, it's like somebody tells somebody, go out there and find me a pine tree. If they've never seen a pine tree, how are they going to find it?
Very good.
That may be a little simplistic.
no, I like that. I like that.
All right, Tom McGreevy, the bloodstock agent that pulled down Songbird and many, many other champions for Fox Hill Farms, and Rick Porter. Thanks for joining us this morning. Good luck going
Enjoyed
forward. All right, we're going to wrap things up. Seth Merrill from EquiDaily.com, Steve Bick from Sirius and XM's at the races. We're running late, but we've run late every week so far because we're jam-packed up here.
We just can't tear ourselves away.
And next week, post-Travers conversation should be a lot of fun. Big week coming up, of course. Big day here at the track as well. Looks like the weather may hold up. We'll hold off. We'll keep our fingers crossed as far as that. But we're going to wrap things up for this Sunday morning. Don't forget, we'd love to hear from you. Loose on the lead at yahoo.com. You can also swing over and visit the Facebook page. As I say, questions, comments, or suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. All right.